Hello, it is time to do my favorite video, my August wrap up. It actually was a pretty good reading month, surprisingly, because I went back to school. So here are some stats and we'll get into the video. The first book I read this month was a graphic novel, of course, and it was actually Something is Killing the Children, Volume 3. I was gonna say 5. Volume 3, and this is the final volume in this arc of the series, so you could totally like start it and complete it now with like a whole satisfying kind of ending. This is a series about a town that starts getting terrorized by these monsters that are killing the children. So Erica Slaughter comes into town and ends up getting help with this kid as well to defeat the monsters, because she's a monster slayer from the House of Slaughter. So it's a really good series. I love the art style. It kind of reminds me of like an older type of art style versus like something that's more clean cut that you see now, more so nowadays. This one's a little bit like rougher, but it still looks really cool and colorful. I think it was a really solid conclusion. I gave it 4.25. It just felt a little bit anticlimactic in my opinion, but I would say that it would drag too much if it was extended like another volume. So I rather this than the latter, you know. After that, I read all 4 volumes in Fence in one afternoon. This is a sports graphic novel series set in a boarding school. Our main character is here on scholarship and he has to make it onto the fencing team, otherwise he loses his scholarship and then he can't attend the school. And he also has this rivalry with the second best fencer in the country. And so that's kind of a thing, and he has this whole like mission to beat him in a round. So it's really angsty like that, but it's also just super fun. It's mostly about the sports, and so the little bit of moments that we get about his life and the side characters' lives are really special because they're kind of like these bonding found family moments that I just really love, because this book is incredible, or this series I should say is incredibly queer as well, and it's casual queerness, and I'm just obsessed. I'm obsessed. Like, there's a reason I read all 4 volumes in one afternoon. Like, it is such a good series, and I love the fencing, especially being like that's the whole point of the series. I can't wait to read the 2 novelizations, especially because I heard that they focus more on the life of these kids versus like the sporting, but I still hope like the fencing is still in there. I gave the first 3 volumes 4 stars, and I gave the 4th volume a 4.25, I think. Continuing on with fantastic reads, it was such a good start to the month, y'all. I read The Beautiful Ones by SMG. This is one of my new all-time favorite books. You will not be surprised to see it in my top 10 at the end of the year. This is a historical romance. I love historical settings. Historical romances I need more of now because of this book. It's set in it's like a completely fantasy world. It's called Louisville, which is the city that we're in. And when I say fantasy, I mean it's just like a made-up world that she created specifically for this story. So our main setting is Louisville, and our heroine is Nina. She is a telekinetic, but because she's a woman, she's never really been able to like tap into that ability of hers, because like women, you know, it's society life. She is new to Louisville. She's staying with her cousin and his wife to find, you know, a husband, a match, and she's not too mad about this. She's very much a romantic, which I like about her. I like when characters aren't written to be so edgy, you know, like there needs to be a good balance. Our hero is Hector, and he is also a telekinetic. He's a performer. That's like his full-time job, and he travels around the world. He's very famous, and he's back in the city after 10 years, and he has this plan to reunite with his past love. Do you want to know who his past love is? It's not a spoiler. It's revealed in like the first 2 chapters. It's Valerie. You know who Valerie is? Valerie is Nina's step cousin, aka her cousin's wife. So Hector makes this plan to court Nina in order to get closer to Valerie. Y'all, if that doesn't like describe to you pain, I don't know what is. Like, I knew going into this book I was going to be depressed. I knew it was going to be a hard time, and I was not wrong. Like, part 1 is it's so stressful to read, because you just know it's all gonna go downhill at one point. Like, it's just gonna come crashing down on Hector, and It's so hard to read. So it's very like tragic in that way. It's also very beautiful because SMG's writing is like godly. I'm literally obsessed. One of my favorite modern writers. I love this book. I love the characters. We get a huge focus on Hector in part 1, which I think is really beneficial for me as a reader because I can be like very anti men in books sometimes, but because Hector and Nina share like equal spotlights in this book, we get a huge focus on Hector, I'm able to forgive him more for like his dumb actions because this man doesn't know when to quit. Like I literally, oh my god, if he wasn't a perspective in this book, I would hate him. I would hate him, but because like he's a main character, I adore him, and I actually quite liked him more than Nina for part 1 of this book. And then of course when we go into part 2 and we get like a main focus on Nina after the events of part 1, I ended up really liking her more in her development. 5 stars. I'm obsessed with this book. After that, read something else that was fantastic, 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, which is the first one in this duology and also their newest release. Definitely made me want to pick up everything else that she has written. This is a Wild Swans reimagining, which is a story by Hans Christian Andersen. And in this book, Shiori, leading up to this event, she ends up getting cursed by her stepmother, where she can't speak. And if she does, then one of her 6 brothers is going to fall dead. And her 6 brothers got turned into cranes. So she also gets like a wooden bowl put on her head so that nobody could recognize her. And she gets like banished off onto like this island of some sorts that's like way far away from her kingdom. And this whole book is about her trying to break this curse that her stepmother put upon all of them. And it is such a good fantasy simply because it is so whimsical and light and easy to read. It reads like a fairy tale exactly when it comes to the way characters talk and the way that time jumps. It just felt like I was in this very classical, fantastical world, something that I would definitely read as a child. I love this world so much, and just because of how much I love this world that she created, I literally want to read the Spin the Dawn duology. I know it's not called that, but I just want to go back into this world because I know that those books are set in this world as well. And I have some theories for the second book. I'm just really excited to read it, and I can't wait. I can't believe I have to wait an entire year. And I will admit that I did cry. I did cry a little. There were tears on the waterline at the end. I was just so overcome with emotion. I also read The Wild Swans, the original story, to reference, 6 Crimson Cranes, because I wanted to see, I just like really comparing the originals to the retellings almost. And I'll show the edition that I read here, and it was a really good edition, and it was really cool to see how similar it was in terms of structure to 6 Crimson Cranes. Or how similar 6 Crimson Cranes is to the original story. Stepping off from that high that I had at the beginning of the month, I finished Brave New Worlds by, what's this dude's name? Aldous Huxley? It's a really cool name, but I always forget what it is. So I can give him that. He has an awesome author name, but I didn't like this book. This is, honestly, it's really hard to describe dystopians like this, especially 1984. At least 1984, I can kind of give you a general premise. But this one, it's more about the society than it is about what actually happens in the book. So in this society, anything that's taboo that typically dystopians like to shun, it embraces, and that's what the society is. Babies are made in factories, and love and drugs, they kind of are the normal. If you don't do both, you're weird. If you're monogamous, you're weird. If you don't take soma, which is a drug, you're an outcast to society. And so we kind of just follow these group of characters in the society. Bernard is our first protagonist. He's kind of he's not like other girls. He doesn't feel like he fits in. People bully him because he's so existential, and kind of it develops from there. We have, of course, a woman, and I forgot what her name was. Lena, I think? Or Lenina. Her name was Lenina, yeah. And then eventually we have this Christ figure, the typical stuff you would see in a classic. And the reason I didn't like it as much is because I don't like Aldous Huxley's writing, and I don't like how he does exposition. It's just it's very like on the verge of info dumps in the way that it's too dense to understand. I had to like go back and look up summaries of each chapter because I didn't know what was going on after I finished this book. Like, this book has a really crazy ending, and I do like the ending, but I had to look it up to see what it actually meant because I had no idea. It was so quick and it was so crazy. I was like, what the heck is going on? When I think of 1984, it's like a slab of concrete, and when I think of Brave New World, it's more like a whirl like this of color. Something else that I read that I didn't like after that was It Eats What Feeds It, which is by Max Hoven and Gabrielle Lumazark. This is a graphic novel, of course. I don't know if this is going to be the only one. I'm pretty sure it is. It's just about this kid, this young boy. He's like in his late teens, early 20s probably. He's looking for a job and a place to stay, and he ends up getting hired by this woman who lives in a mansion in the middle of the woods. And she's like this older woman, but she's really attractive, and so he's happy. And then like there's this other creepy stuff that's going on. I read it because it looked creepy. Like, it looks like a horror. It looks like it was gonna be very atmospheric, and it very much was. I like the art style because it contributes to the atmosphere. It's very dark, but the horror / creepy bits didn't come until like the last bit of it, and then everything else was just like a male fantasy. And I wrote in my review, it's too male gazy for me. Like, I didn't like it at all. And then I don't understand what the horror of it was anyways. It was so quick, over and done with. I felt like I got scammed. I don't recommend it. What I do recommend though is Spectre and Spectres. I finally read the final issue, which came onto Hoopla finally. This is about a group of kids who are like supernatural investigators, and one day at one of their shoots, their friend gets possessed by a demon. This demon kind of sends them on this like adventure of sorts, and they go along with it because they want to get this demon out of their friend, of course. And they all end up getting like trapped, kind of grouped into this town conspiracy. It's a really fun series. I love the art style. I love the characters. It's incredibly queer. We come to the great confrontation in this town conspiracy, and we're gonna see if they're gonna finally get this demon out of her. Of course, at this point in the series, there's like a change in relationship with the demon. It's for you to figure out if you read the series, but it's just really surprisingly wholesome, like found family realness, and I love it so much. I can't wait to own it because I know they're going to release a bind-up, and I just need to hold this book in my hand and reread it for the rest of my life. And it's such like, the ending. I love the ending so much, and I hope they write more issues / graphic novels in this world, because I need to see more of these characters. I doubt they would get possessed by a demon again, but you never know. They're supernatural investigators. They could literally get trapped into so many scenarios. Next, I read Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. I read this for the 1,000 Doors Readathon, which I actually vlogged, but I hated the vlog, so I'm not uploading it because I also low-key like failed it. I don't know why, but I did. Anyways, I actually read this physically from the library, but I already turned it in. This is the popular Hades Persephone dark romance that everybody is reading. Sorry, words, they work. This book, it's set in Mount Olympus, of course, but it's like a modern retelling. I'm not a fan of modern retellings, by the way, so I was kind of like setting myself up for failure anyways. But this is about Mount Olympus. Okay, we're in Mount Olympus. It's like a New York-esque empire kind of city. Two hemispheres, of course. The upper city, the lower city, which you could assume is like the underworld. Persephone is our main character, and immediately in chapter 1 we see that her mother Demeter has married her off to Zeus, who is the most powerful man in the city, also rumored to have killed his previous 3 wives. And so you could tell that Persephone is not necessarily happy about this marriage, and she ends up kind of running away, and then she gets chased by Zeus's men to the edge of the city, and she ends up like having to cross the river Styx to the lower city. And also on the other side of the bank is a man that's like urging her to come because he sees that these men are chasing her, and so nobody ever goes to the lower city. This is like a really big deal, and so that man ended up being Hades, and so Hades takes care of her, and they kind of get into this fake dating thing so that she doesn't have to marry Zeus. And if you read any Katie Roberts, you know it's mainly not about the plot, it's about the other things. This book was good. Well, okay, good is not the word it was a fun time. Not really a big fan of it. I don't know if it's because I wasn't in the mood for it, or I necessarily think that this book just wasn't my favorite. Mainly because Hades and Persephone's relationship is mainly physical, and I'm more of a slow burn gal, so I know I can't fault the book for that, but I want emotional connections versus like immediate emotional connections and then a growth on the physical thing. I don't know, but I was okay about the relationship. I am interested about the politics of the world, so I am going to continue on with the series just to see like what happens and progresses in the background, especially with what happens at the end. Oh my god, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting those last 50-ish pages, so 3.5. I gave that one a 3.5. I read Artificial Condition, which is the second book in the Murderbot Diaries series. And we have our main character Murderbot, who has kind of altered himself so that he doesn't have to just do his purpose, which is being like a murder bot. It's pretty self-explanatory. And this thing happened at this place that he was at, and so he's trying to find answers to it. In this book specifically, he goes to this location so that he could find those answers, and then he ends up meeting this technology thing. I don't know exactly what it is, but his name is Art. Art is fantastic. I love Art. And they kind of, Art gets him hired for this job so that he could actually go to this place to investigate further. But then there's also a part of the book where he's doing this job. So I love this book. I loved it way more than the first one, mainly because I was actually like paying attention to it. I was just like cleaning and listening to the audiobook on 1x speed, by the way. I didn't speed it up because it is a novella, so I don't really care. I love the job that he gets and the people that he meets, and I didn't necessarily catch exactly the one part of the book, which is like the most important part of the book, but I get the gist. And so I'm excited to see where the story continues. And then I reread A Diary of Blood also in that weekend. I love this book. You know I love this book. It's just about Constanza and her reflection through letters on this relationship she had with this guy that turned her into a vampire. I forgot how fantastic the part 3 was. It literally was so emotionally packed. And I was like, yes, this is why I love this book. Part 3 is exactly why I love this book. And then I also read the short story that she released, or the epilogue, I should say, An Encore of Roses, which was also fantastic. Love Alexia. Love what happened. I got distracted yesterday after that last clip, so I'll just be finishing my reviews right now. So the book I read after that was The All-Consuming World by Cassandra Khaw, and this one was technically a disappointment. This is a cyberpunk sci-fi novel about these two women who are getting their old gang back together. They're called the Dirty Dozen, in order to save one of their members and complete a impossible heist. I was very confused throughout this whole book, and I think that's my main criticism, is I couldn't quite pick up what the story was trying to be. I don't know if it's a character-driven novel or a plot-driven novel, because each chapter is very individual to the character. It is multi-perspective. I really felt like we were focusing on the characters a lot, and then suddenly it would be very plot-based, and I don't know if I kind of like that mix. I think I prefer it just to be one or the other. Like, if it's going to be character-driven, I want the plot to advance the character growth, and if it's going to be plot-driven, I want well-written characters. You know what I mean? And also for like 2 out of 3 of the perspectives, I had no idea what was going on. Like, at least with Maya, I knew what they were doing, but then with Pimento and, oh god, what was that girl's name? Elise? I think it was Elise. Yeah, they were talking in code or something. I have no idea what they were. They were somewhere else in my mind. I think the characters were really cool though. Each of them are very individual, even the perspective characters. None of them really are kind of shadows to the story. I think my favorite character would probably be Rita, who is this like female manipulator, and she's really a terrible person, but she's also just really cool to read about from other people. We never, I guess, know who she is individually because we don't have her perspective. We only know her from Maya's perspective, and Maya is very much a victim of hers, and so it's interesting to see this like conflicts that Maya has with herself about what she thinks of Rita, because she's very much in love with her, but she also understands that Rita is a terrible person and treats her like trash. I just really like relationships like that. I mean, hello, A Dowry of Blood. Let me get it. A Dowry of Blood is like one of my new all-time favorite books, and this is literally about a toxic relationship. I gave it a 3.5. Technically a disappointment, but I wouldn't put off from recommending it to you. I think Cassandra Khaw has a really unique way of writing, and I definitely recommend reading this physically because it'll probably be easier to digest that way. Like, I may possibly reread this book physically just so that I could like get that experience that I was hoping to get. Okay, moving on to my last book, I read Cheer Up, which is a graphic novel. I don't know if this is going to be a series, but this is about a rekindling friendship of this girl who joins the cheer team, who her ex-best friend, I think, is the captain of, or now is the captain of, and they kind of like, you know, they're just doing this thing. It's like a high school kind of coming of age where they both grow. It's really cute. It's adorable. Trigger warning, or content warnings, I should say, for transphobia, because the captain of the team is a trans girl, so a lot of the people around her, is kind of a point of the story for like a lot of the people around her not to know how to be sensitive. So it's really hard to read because you know they're trying, but then also it wouldn't hurt to ask how to be, you know, like it's just like cishet people being cishet. I give it 4 stars, I think. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed my reviews, and I will see you hopefully next week. Bye.